Hello and welcome back to another episode of Let's Make an Atari Game. In this episode I'll go over all the progress I've made since the last episode, and I've kind of hit a snag with the physical release of this game. I'll talk about that too. So right away, all the monsters are in, all the items are in, and what I need to do now mainly is to balance them out. How often items appear when you clear a room, and how difficult the monsters are. Right now their distribution is different, they look different, but they all act the same. I'll see if I can find one to show you. Alright, skeletons, same skeleton as always. And we got bats. More bats. And, some goblins. Oh, man. Got cornered by some goblins. So the deeper you go, the different monsters, you'll discover different monsters. Alright, so this blob, he's pretty easy to get away from. Haven't run into any items yet. They're a bit scarce, I think. When I designed the game, I designed it for a certain number of monsters, and I just assumed I could add them into the game, but as I was adding them in last week, I ran out of space again. All that space I added, I just was sucked up by all these new monsters, so what I had to do is go through the whole game and rewrite how each monster is stored in the ROM to make more space. And it turns out I was able to fit them all in, but I only have a few hundred bytes now left to finish it. So what is there left to finish other than balancing? Well, gameplay-wise, it's pretty good when you have a ranged weapon. But as soon as you switch to a melee weapon, it gets a little easy. Let's see if I can find the stairway again. Where was it? Down here? Oh, way over here? There it is. Find that. Oh, he's dead. So either I kill him in one hit. If it takes me more than one hit to hit a monster, the monster always retaliates. So you always get hit. These guys, they're all the same hit points, which is like 1. So they're all very easy to kill. And that's a problem because as soon as you switch to a melee weapon, the game is a cakewalk. Or, if the monsters have more health and you hit them, they always hit you back. And then it's sort of more like a war of attrition. I don't want that either. So the thing I have to add in the next 100 bytes of space that I have left is attack animations. So I think what I'll do is sort of like, when you're shooting an arrow, that's an action you take. So instead of just walking into enemies to kill them, you'll have to swing your sword and walk into them at the same time. So to make it a little bit more challenging with a melee weapon, as of right now, it's just, pretty easy. Of course, they can't damage me anyway, because I turned that off. But if they could, they wouldn't be. Right, so what about the physical release of this game? Well, what about finishing this game first? Let's not get too far ahead of ourselves. So, I'll need to add an attack animation and a few hundred bytes. I think I should be able to do that. And I need to balance the monsters and items. And after that, I'll release a test version. And probably the next video? I don't want to get too far ahead of myself. I have this... I tend to be a little optimistic with my ability in programming this in a timely fashion. But maybe by the time I make a next video, I'll have the test version you can download and try it in Stella. And let me know if there's anything wrong with it, if I need to fix anything, if you think a change would make it more fun. Right, so you can see the problem with this. It's just, I'm not having any trouble dispatching these monsters. Needs to be a little bit more challenging than that. Right. Right, so what about the physical release? Well, I've run into some problems with that. And the problems I'm having is mainly with securing the cartridges. I thought it'd be a good idea to see what the lead time was on, buying cartridges for this. And what I found was that there aren't very many Melody cartridges. So I started asking around, okay, well, who makes them? And can I order them directly from that person? And maybe if I could order them with just the PC board, so it's cheaper to ship, and I can add my own cartridge shells, that kind of thing. Well, it's pretty much ignored by everyone, except for the Atari Age, the person who handles Atari Age publishing. And he said, it'll have to be a few months down the line, and it'd probably be easier for him if we just published the game in the Atari Age store. He only has to make the cartridge when someone buys it. That makes sense. Then I thought, well, how much do you earn on average every sale? How much does the creator of the game earn when their game sells on Atari Age? And it turns out this probably varies a lot between developers, but it's about $5. And if you remember in the last video, I did a costing on how much I'd have to sell to break even and all that. That is all out the window with $5 per cartridge, because it's just, should I do the math? Let's do the math. So in the last video, I estimated about $14 profit per game, and that was with the most expensive cartridges and the most expensive boxes and things like that. So it was like the worst case scenario, $14. And that would have to sell like 360 to break even, which is probably impossible, but it might not be. However, if I publish on Atari Age, I'm only getting $5 per sale. Well, I don't have to buy the manuals anymore, but I'm still earning less per sale. But anyway, so let's say $5,000, let's say it cost me $5,000, say I spent a month on it, which is wrong. I spent like 3 months on it so far, but let's just say I was really experienced. I spent a month on it. Now I've got to sell it for $5 per, I have to sell 1,000. That's just 3 times more than I'd have to sell if I just could do it myself. So I can't get the cartridges. The person who supplies them, I don't know, there's only one person who supplies them, so already this is turning out to be bad. So I can't really recommend making the game in Atari Basic and using DPC Plus kernel anymore, because these Melody cartridges are the bottleneck in all this process. If you want to have a physical release. If you don't care about physical release and you just want to learn about making games on the Atari, and that's all you're interested in, then they're perfect for that. But if you ever want to sell your game as a cartridge for a real Atari, you just can't do it that way. You don't earn enough exclusively through Atari Age, and they won't sell you the cartridges. I mean, they will. They just can't sell you the cartridges in the volume that you need them in to break even. So I could probably order 20 or 30 at a time. That's probably no problem for them to handle. But as soon as you get up to like 100 or 200, they really can't supply that many. So that leaves me with a dilemma. What I originally planned to do was to buy everything all up front, get all the cost out of the way, and then if this is the only game I made for the Atari, eventually I would sell 360. It might take 10 years, but if I don't work anymore on it, it still makes a profit eventually, right? And I would have learned a lot and had a lot of fun. In this instance where Atari Age makes they get the lion's share of the profit. So I think to combat this in the future, this sort of vendor lock-in, is I'm going to create my own cartridges. And that will make an interesting turn on this series as well. Like, how do you make your own cartridge? What's involved in not just making the cartridge outside, but the PC board? What about the EEPROM that holds the game code? How does all that work? I have no idea. I've never done it before. I'll just document that as well in this series. But for this particular game, I can't do that. The game's too far along. I've invested too much time in it. So I'll finish it using DPC Plus, but this will be the last time I use DPC Plus. Oh. This is so much easier than having to shoot them. Just walk into them, they're dead. So what I'm going to do next is animate melee attacks and sort of make them a little bit more tactical than they are now. Just walking into things. And I'll try and balance the monsters and treasures around that, and hopefully in the next video I'll have a download available. As far as a physical release, I might still try and publish it on Atari Age just so it has a physical release so I can say I've done it. But the next game, I'm going to do everything, and I won't have to rely on anyone else. Man, there's no items turning up at all. I might have made it a little bit too difficult to acquire items. You should at least get something every now and then, but you get nothing. Right, so that's what's next. Attack animations in the few 100 bytes I have remaining left in the ROM, and balancing the monsters and treasures. Then I'll have a release